Hi guys, welcome back to the Blossoming Journal. For those of you who are returning, thank you so much for your endless support. And for those of you who are new, welcome. The Blossoming Journal is a space primarily for the awareness of mental health, disorders, medication, coping mechanisms, therapy, and at the same time, a place for those who do struggle with their mental health to be able to release whatever they need to, or to relate, or to find some form of comfort, solace, or motivation or inspiration, or sometimes just so that they know they're not alone. I personally have been battling with my own mental health for exactly 10.5 years. Not that I'm celebrating, but the duration means a lot, and I'm gonna get to that. And throughout this 10-year period, it's a whole decade, throughout this 10-year period, I have not only learned an immense amount about the mental health stratosphere, how medications work, what kind of medications you are being prescribed, why are you being prescribed such medications, and trying to always find a way to taper down the doses or to try to eliminate some of the medication given, because they do carry lifelong side effects. I'm sharing with you my personal experience from 10 years ago, and when I was still pretty young and pretty naive and was very trusting, let's say, of the world. So I'm basically sharing purely on my journey, how it happened, how did it go on, and where I am today. But first, I still need to make this disclaimer. It's very important. In my lifetime, a couple of times where I had literally just hit rock bottom, had really dark periods, and things were just very difficult, and I found myself at rock bottom. And this has happened a couple of times, but there was a one time where I was in that predicament, and I kind of sat down and I just started asking myself, because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know where. So I started asking myself, is it really everybody else's fault? Is it really that everyone is wrong? Is it really that you are the victim of everything? Is it really that the world is at fault for everything? When I had that internal kind of discussion, that was the day I was ready to receiving professional help, because God knows how long my parents tried to get me to see a psychiatrist or at least a psychologist, because they knew that I had issues. But as with most mental disorders, they develop eventually in life. So there's this debate on whether you are born with the gene or it comes to you as life goes by, based on your nurturing and your environment and everybody in your life that has shaped you to the point of adulthood. So I desperately needed to see someone. I immediately was like, no, we're gonna try and find someone who can help somehow. Because at that point, my depression was so severe. I was having suicidal ideation on a very regular basis, and that scared the shit out of me. So I knew that I needed help. I went onto my hospital website, and the first psychiatrist I saw, I made the appointment with that person. Only to find out 10.5 years later that this guy almost killed me, and literally, in some ways, ruined my life for good. I go to see this doctor, and I'm telling him my symptoms, telling him what's been going on a daily basis, how I've been feeling. And he was extremely quick to come with a diagnosis and be like, oh, I'm very sure you have bipolar type 2. I didn't even know there were different types. I thought bipolar is bipolar. So I was like, okay. I felt relieved, to be honest. Not because I was mentally ill, but because I finally had a name to put on to what I was feeling, to put on to my emotions. And the only way I can illustrate this is rather silly, but imagine having a cut and then you go and get this cut checked out because it's a pretty deep gush. And the doctor tells you, this is bipolar. And then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, bipolar. Okay, sure. So now we know what we're dealing with. Now we can treat it. And I trusted him. I trusted him with my life because basically you are surrendering, you are allowing this stranger to know what's going on in your mind, to know your deepest, darkest fears, your secrets, your insecurities. And you trust in you, and you're giving this, while that person may be a doctor and trained in the field, but still it's a stranger to you. So it's a very terrifying process to begin seeking medical help, because you would think that, oh yeah, sure, I'll just call my hospital and make an appointment. No, it's not that simple. When it comes to psychiatry or psychology, anything that has to do with human contact between the patient and the doctor, the most important thing that you need to have in order for any kind of treatment to happen is chemistry. You need to have chemistry with the person that you're going to entrust all that's here and here to. Because if you don't feel comfortable with that person, it's going to be extremely difficult to open up, and therefore it's going to be very difficult to try to find a solution to your problem. So you have to be aware of that. If you were to need to see a professional, always keep it in mind. If I don't have chemistry with this person, if I don't feel comfortable or safe, if I feel like I'm being judged, if I feel like I'm being belittled, then perhaps that particular person is not meant for you. And then you go off looking for someone else who could be. And I know it's a very stressful thing to do. It's extremely stressful and traumatic up to a certain extent to be able to finally find that one doctor who you trust with your life. Without completing a thorough, let's say, evaluation, and without spending more time with me, having listened to me talk, understanding how I think, how I process things, what hurts me. He didn't do any of that. The second visit, I was supposed to do a homework, which is a very simple one, but it makes sense because, like I said, the debate still goes on. Are you born with the gene, or does it come later in life? So he made me do an exercise, and I was to write my family tree on both mother and father's side, and each generation, what kind of diseases or illnesses that they had, be it physical or mental. And unfortunately, that was enough for him to immediately diagnose me. Today, I have come to learn that in order to diagnose a patient with a specific disorder and to medicate that patient, it can take extremely long, sometimes months, because the doctor has to keep seeing you and keep understanding your level of stress, your level of ability to handle your reality. How do you process your feelings? How do you even talk about your feelings? These are all incredibly important things that mental health practitioners, doctors, or psychologists, counselors, they need to do this before telling you that you have X, Y, Z, Z, X, Y, Z, Y, A, B, C, D, E. I mean, like, it's a long process. But this specific doctor, on my second visit, yes, second visit, he immediately put me on medication. The medication he gave me was not only very dangerous, let's say, because yeah, they're pretty dangerous medications, but he gave me an extremely high dose of these medications as well. So I was so heavily sedated that I could not wake up for one entire week. And my parents were losing their mind. They were like, what has he done to her? Eventually the week passed and I was slowly kind of able to wake up, even though it was difficult. But we understood that that was the result of the medication, especially since you're new to it, your body's adjusting to it, and it's a very high dose. Instead of starting from the lowest dose to go up, no, he did the opposite. I continued with the treatment, continued with the medication, because I did have chemistry with this particular doctor. Even though, I mean, he did a shit job, but we could talk and I was able to let out a lot of the things that I had kept pent up inside. So that was the reason why I continued seeing him, because there was chemistry, or at least he was able to kind of extract things from me and try to make me realize that, do you know that you feel this way because of this or that? And that relationship, or the amount of time I saw him, was for 3 years. I spent 3 years seeing him. Now here's the very unfortunate part. As we go on with treatment, again, I'm still on the very high dose of medications, which are very dangerous, because psychotropics and benzodiazepines are no joke. And anybody who comes to tell me that, oh, if you take that, you're a psychopath, fuck you. I would have, in some occasions, I would have a little bit of like a stumbling block, or let's say something bad happened at work, or I had to break up with my boyfriend and I was really sad. Anytime he saw me sad, he not only increased the dosage of the medication I was already on, but he put me on even more medication. So at the end of the 3-year tenure of being his patient, I was on 5 different psychotropics and benzodiazepines, all at very high doses. I don't know how I didn't die, but the basis is that I decided, and I realized that I really needed to do something about tapering down the dose and trying to get off some of the medications. Because remember this, you can never, ever, ever stop taking your medication cold turkey. You can never stop it right away. It's not the same like alcoholism or drug abuse. And there have been cases of people who ended up taking their own lives because they stopped taking their medication and their depression became so bad, or they became completely irate. We cannot stop our medication cold turkey. So I needed to taper it down. Usually when you taper down medication, you go by grams. So it's either 0.5 milligrams or 100 milligrams depending on the medication. So you start slowly, and then you have to cut your pills in half, because I cannot take 200, I only need to take 150. So you have to know which part of the pill to cut. So it's also a very stressful process to go through, because your body has to now again readjust to a change in medication that it had grown to be accustomed to. But when you start mixing around with the type or the dosage, that's when you start seeing all the side effects that can come through from tapering it down. And which is why I now understand the fact that trying to get off psychotropics and benzodiazepines, especially the ones that I was on, it can take up to 2 years to be off it completely. I was referred to by a friend to see a separate psychiatrist in a different hospital. Her main specialization is addiction, so she viewed me as a drug addict, and she said it to my face several times. And that is so beyond painful, because none of this is your choice. Yeah, maybe you can choose not to take the medication and maybe your depression gets worse. It's completely up to you, but I didn't have a choice. I needed to take the medication because it somehow helped me be more balanced. Because that's the point of these medications. These medications are meant to keep you balanced, not zombified or not completely electrified, where you just like fly off to the moon. And this person was meant to help me taper down my doses so that I could at least get out of maybe 2 types of medications, because being on 5 is awful, okay? It's very unfortunate that she wasn't professional as well. She was not she basically called me a drug addict because of all the medication I was taking. But not only that, she was always belittling me. She was always telling me that your life is fucked up and you're just a spoiled, rich, cranky kid who couldn't get her favorite toy. That's the way she approached me. And she would tell me to my face various times that you are fucked up. My daughter is younger than you and she's far more accomplished than you. To be honest, I don't know in what society or country or university would allow a psychiatrist to tell her patient that she is fucked up over and over and over again. So I had to put up with that abuse, because that's abuse. That's just a plain and simple abuse. I had to put up with that because I desperately needed to get off certain medications. I needed it for my health. So I had to put up with that for 2 years. And then I realized, no, I can't do this anymore. There's no way I can go and see this doctor anymore. Every time I know that I have an appointment coming up, I would have like a horrible panic attack, and I would feel horrible, and it was traumatic just seeing the psychiatrist. But nonetheless, she did what I went there to do, which is to get me off some other medications, and I was very happy about that. So looking on the bright side, she did help me, apart from her verbal abuses and treating me and telling me that I'm a drug addict. At least she did what I went to see her for. So I can't 100% complain because we reached the goal. But still, you don't talk to people like that. You can't. Whether it's a professional environment, whether it's doctor, patient, or friends, family, you just don't talk to people like that. Eventually, I found myself once again at rock bottom. Very, very dark place in my life. And my mental health was severely affected because of it. So I was back at rock bottom. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I believe by the grace of God or by the universe trying to help me, I managed to see a psychiatrist who is not only extremely professional, but she's a compassionate, understanding, and she's just an amazing person. And we have such good chemistry. We really do have a good relationship. And I could not be more thankful for that blessing. She is a blessing. But guess what? I find out through her, because she shares a lot of things with me. She knows about the Blossoming Journal. She knows that I'm a vlogger and a blogger, and I do try to, in my little network, try to raise mental health awareness. So she does share with me a lot of things with regards to certain disorders. When I saw her, she did not diagnose me until a month later. So now go back to the beginning when I was seeing the other doctor, the first doctor. Second consultation, I was already diagnosed and medicated. This doctor, 1 month diagnosis, 1.5 months medication. And that is the way to go, because she needed to know exactly who was I. What was my problems? Why were they my problems? How do I approach things in life? I've said it earlier, like the chemistry bit and the things that you have to surrender to this person. She finally diagnosed me with what I actually have. I have major depression, generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, hypothyroidism, which affects your hormones and therefore affects your mood, and of late, agoraphobia. She saw the way I was interacting, and she immediately told me that you are not bipolar. I can't diagnose you right now because I need to have more sessions with you. I need you to do a little bit of work for me, which is basically questionnaires and all that. I need to see you more often to evaluate your state of mind. How are you coping? What's happening? The support system that I had back home. She needed time to understand who this patient was. Who was she seeing? And I truly appreciate her for that, because it also helped me learn about her. And that's where the connection came, because we would share with each other a lot of things that we actually do have in common. And the funny thing is, throughout the years, I myself wondered, am I bipolar? I don't have manic highs. I'm always low. I'm mostly depressed. So I myself kind of doubted the bipolar diagnosis, but whatever. You trust your doctors, right? Some occasions, it is entirely dependent on your environment. But in some situations, you just can't help it. So yeah, I'm on this side. I can't help it. I've always been more on the depressive side, and I've always struggled with anxiety. So yeah, my doctor pretty much hit the nail on the coffin, because she's like, you have this. She gave me a rundown for all of the things that she diagnosed me for. And she needed, of course, before diagnosing me, she needed to know if I ticked as many boxes as possible. So she brought out her DCM-5, and she went straight to generalized anxiety disorder. I mean, she knows what she's doing. She knew exactly what I had, but she needed to confirm it. And so she understood that I needed to go back on some of the medications that I had already kind of discarded thanks to Psychiatrist number 2. She had no choice but to put me back on 2 of those medications because of how bad my trauma was and how broken I was. She witnessed that, and she made sure to help me get through that, and she has. She truly has. So here's the biggest problem. And as I said earlier at the beginning of the video, the time frame matters a lot. Remember that I was put on a lot of medication in very high doses. 10 years on, which I wish they were wrong, but every single doctor or anyone else in the mental health field, or any other doctor for whatever specialization, knowing the medication that I've been on, all say the same thing. In 10 years time, you are going to experience the side effects, and it's going to be really bad. But you know what? 10.5 years later, they are right. They are right. I have high cholesterol. I have an extremely high pulse, which people, nurses and doctors tend to really panic. Unfortunately, my kidneys are only working at 60%. I am beginning to experience or beginning to have chronic liver disease. I do get insomnia sometimes. I get this brain fog, which to me it's horrible, because this brain fog makes you, first of all, have zero attention span, because you just cannot follow, and you can't remember things. You forget things all the time, and suddenly you are like, where the heck am I? So I was walking down the streets in a major town in Europe, but I wasn't sure how I got there or why was I there. So being in that state of mind, not knowing where you are, what are you doing, and having this fog in your mind in a major city, it is bad news. Like, there's nothing worse than that. The moment I could gain some clarity, I would immediately call an Uber and be like, I need to go, take me to this address and go back home straight. That upsets me, because I didn't even need to be on those medications to begin with, because I am not bipolar. So I don't need the things that he was prescribing, and eventually the things that I kept on being on. Even though the second psychiatrist managed to reduce the dosage and remove some medications, but still, I was still on the medications that have the worst long-term side effects. And they always say it will either attack your heart, your liver, your kidneys. I'm in my 30s, and my kidneys are only functioning at 60%. But I also need to mention that I do suffer from lupus. And when I get a flare-up, I immediately develop arthritis. So my C protein levels are usually very, very high, including my eosinophil levels as well. So I know that that's part of the lupus, but a lot of the other issues with my organs or the brain fog is got to do with the medication. Don't you want to strangle him? Like, just... Ugh! I also want to bring awareness to the fact that just because you are on medications, it doesn't mean that it's going to work straight off the bat. In fact, it's a common thing where psychiatrists will tell you, okay, try this medication and we'll see how you do in a month's time. So there's a lot of experimentation, actually, if you think about it, trying to find the right little chemicals to help you, because there's so many different types of medication for all disorders. So if the doctor was like, we're gonna try this, and if it doesn't fit you, then you're gonna have to try something else. That is taxing on your body physically. So you also have to understand that if you ever need to be medicated, it's not like immediately it's gonna work. No. There are times when you would have to change medication several times. The other thing I wanted to point out is that just because you're seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist, it doesn't mean that it's going to be good for you or is going to be the right thing or is going to help you. Take me, for example. My first two psychiatrists, one was basically a drug pusher because he completely zombified me and justified it some more. Because he's like, oh, you need help, and adds on more medication. The second psychiatrist was forever belittling me and making me feel worthless. So you have to also understand that just because you're seeing somebody, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And that's why I keep stressing on the chemistry part. Because if you can trust this person to surrender everything that is within you, you need to know that this person is someone that you can speak to openly without being judged, without being told, no, you're wrong, or being told, well, other people have it worse, so stop complaining. My sincere advice to you, fellow bloomers, if ever you need medical attention or medical aid for your mental health, whether it be a long-term thing or a short-term thing because you're in the middle of a crisis and that needs to be addressed and you could get better and that's it. Those who have disorders, we have our periods where sometimes things can get a bit ugly and you can't really understand why because you're already on the medication. So why am I still feeling this way? I mean, there's so many elements involved in living with a mental disorder. So my main advice, as I was saying, please do as much research as you can. If your doctor tells you that you are depressed, read up about it. Read and learn what is depression. Try to find the different types of depression. See if you can assimilate any of the symptoms that other types of depression has as well. What you can also do is either walk into your local clinic or hospital, ask to speak to a counselor, or just get a pamphlet and start reading about certain things like disorders, medication, treatment, mental health awareness. Go on to forums. Don't rely 100% on them because they're not always accurate, but you can get some things from there. But I have to stress that you have to speak to somebody that you can absolutely trust, because don't do what I did. I told people who I thought were my friends, and at the end of the day, everybody was convinced that I'm a psychopath out of the blue. Psychopaths don't experience depression, by the way. So talk to someone that you can trust. Someone you know that is not going to judge you, is not going to betray you by telling someone else about your struggles. Someone who can be there for you as emotional support, because that's the only thing another person can do, be emotional support. Because other than that, it depends on the doctors, the psychologists, and the therapy. Try to read up as much about the doctor that you intend to be seeing, because there will be reviews all over. Google reviews, there will be. And just try to get as much information as you can. Like, I can't stress this enough, because I did not do that. Out of desperation, I didn't do that. I just went directly to see the person because I was so scared of how I was feeling at the time. So I rushed to see someone. Don't do that. Don't rush into seeing somebody. Or if you decide to see a particular psychiatrist or psychologist, like I said earlier, ensure that the chemistry is there. You can trust this doctor or this person. This person is going to help also to be your emotional support. This person is going to tell you what's really going on in your life and is going to treat you, medicate you, or however. This person is going to be the one that you're going to bare your soul to, because if you don't do that, you are never going to feel better, especially for trauma patients like me. I had to do a mixture of cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy just to understand that I was completely traumatized to the point of being diagnosed with PTSD. Yeah, like I said, it was a very dark period in my life. I was rock bottom. Things were just hell. It was absolute hell. So please, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to DM me, ask me anything you want to know. So I've come to the end of today's video. I know it was a lot. In fact, it was a lot for me too. But I felt like this message has to go out. It needs to go out. Not only because we need to raise awareness on mental health, but we also need to know that our doctors are trustworthy, ethical, and actually caring. I truly hope that you will have a better journey towards feeling better. If you need to take medications, I hope that you don't have to suffer really bad side effects. If you are diagnosed, I hope that you have the support that you need in order to get through it. If you need to take medications, please read up on them. Read up on the side effects, the counter effects with other medications, long-term side effects. All medication have side effects. Psychotropics and benzodiazepines are no different. They have a ton of side effects. Some you will feel almost immediately, but like I said, some only came 10 years later. Now I can speak about it because I have been among various, over this 10-year period, I have been around various people in the mental health field. And so I understand a lot more about myself, my disorders, my struggles, my coping mechanisms, and how am I going to get through without having to depend so much on medication. Because what is the point of being zombified? There's no reason to want to be zombified, because that was the state that I came into very shortly before I stopped seeing the first psychiatrist. I was zombified. I couldn't even cry at funerals, family funerals. I couldn't even cry. Again, I'm going to reiterate, the point of these medications is to keep you stable. Okay? You need to be stable. It doesn't mean you're going to be cured. No. It means that you're going to be stable. So you won't have your extreme depression, your extreme lows. You're not going to have your extreme manic episodes. You need to be able to speak to this person wholeheartedly, because that's the only way you can get through or understand what you have. If you have a mental disorder, if you are having a crisis, it's very important to understand where is the root, the source of all of this pain and anger, frustration, betrayal, all of these emotions that has got you into this crisis. You need to find the source, and therefore you need therapy or medical intervention for that. But again, if your doctor starts prescribing you 5, 6, 7 medications, then you know very well that, okay, this is not gonna go down well. Because it happened to me, and I can tell you, no. I mean, who would want to have kidneys functioning at 60% only when you're in your 30s? said it all. I was wrongly diagnosed. I was stigmatized by my community, by friends. I was given all sorts of names. I was abused. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that everything that I shared in today's video could help someone or would make, an impact. I hope I can help somebody, and I hope that I can pretty much put out the warning out there, like, be careful, this thread carefully. This is not, a race where you need to reach the finish line. No, mental health journeys can take years or months, depending on the person. But anyway, I digress. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a wonderful day or evening, wherever in the world you are. I take care. I love you guys very much.